Have you ever imagined if the owner of the place where you work went undercover and spent days by your side, without you even knowing? It sounds like a movie scene, but it really happened. And what he discovered wasn't pretty. Most people think that when profits drop, the problem lies in marketing, the economy, or competitors. But what if the real issue is within the team itself, in the stories no one dares to tell? Michael Carter, co-owner of one of the highest-rated diners in the city, decided to set his pride aside and step into the front lines as an ordinary customer. What he saw behind the counter made it clear that a polished image alone doesn't keep a business standing. Between fake smiles, hidden injustices, and a cowardly attempt to destroy the reputation of an old worker, he found something that not every owner has: the courage to change the game. This is one of those stories that opens your eyes, turns your stomach, and warms your heart all at once. Because in the end, it's not just about numbers, it's about people. And when a leader chooses to listen, observe, and act with fairness, the transformation that follows goes far beyond profits. So tell me, are you ready to find out what really happened when he sat down at that counter? Michael Carter was the kind of man many secretly envied. Co-owner of the famous Carter's Diner, he had it all: money, reputation, and a restaurant with reviews that would make any competitor jealous. But something inside him kept whispering that there was more behind the curtain of appearances. The stories the numbers didn't tell had started keeping him up at night. After all, how do you explain high staff turnover and falling profits when customers were leaving with smiles and compliments? So, in a move that few would have the guts to make, he swapped his suit for plain clothes, took off his expensive watch, and decided to enter his own restaurant as just another customer. That's when you see who really wants change. Instead of pointing fingers from afar, Michael dove into the heart of the operation, determined to uncover the unspoken stories, the uncomfortable silences, the forced smiles. And it's funny how, sometimes, what's wrong doesn't scream, it whispers behind the scenes. Sitting at the counter, watching closely, he began to notice details he'd never see from the boardroom. The conversations that used to stop when he approached, now they happened right in front of him. The tension in the staff's shoulders, the tired looks, the suspicious whispers, everything was part of a much bigger puzzle. It was as if he had opened a book of hidden stories, and each page revealed a truth no one dared to speak out loud. But that was only the beginning. Sitting near the kitchen, Michael noticed a figure that didn't match the hectic pace of the diner: Henry. An older man with thinning hair, calloused hands, and slow steps, but with a dedication that would put many young people to shame. He washed dishes as if he were cleaning his own memories, one by one, with care and perseverance. There was something in his eyes that carried more than just physical exhaustion. It was the kind of presence that tells stories without needing words. Henry wasn't just an employee. He was a quiet example of dignity amidst the chaos. He had lost his wife to cancer, sold everything he owned to pay for her treatment, and now lived in a nearly collapsing trailer. And even so, he showed up every single day, never late, never complaining. Most people didn't even notice he existed, but Michael did. He saw, and he felt. Stories like Henry's teach us that sometimes the greatest strength comes from those who have lost almost everything, except the will to keep going. And the most remarkable part, even with the little he had, Henry helped others. He paid for strangers' coffees, covered small shortages for coworkers, and smiled when thanked. He was the kind of person who proved, through actions, that generosity doesn't depend on your bank account. If you've ever thought about helping someone but felt like you didn't have enough, remember Henry. Stories like his show us that, more often than not, those who have less end up giving more. But what Michael didn't yet know was that this kindness was being cruelly twisted. As Michael continued his undercover journey, something started to simmer, not in the kitchen, but behind the scenes. Two employees caught his attention: Megan and Troy, the cashiers. Young, talkative, and all smiles with customers, but dripping venom behind closed doors. He caught them mocking Henry's generosity, saying he was stupid for helping everyone, and worse, plotting to throw him to the wolves. The stories told outside the eyes of management are the ones that reveal who people truly are. Their plan was simple, dirty, and cowardly. Convince Patricia, the manager, that Henry was responsible for the discrepancies at the register. Disguised as a customer, Michael overheard everything. including the cruel laughter and snide comments about how easy it would be to fool the tired old man. And to think that, all the while, Henry kept washing dishes, unaware that his reputation was being poisoned. Some stories are so unjust they hurt just to hear. But when you're living inside them, the impact is different. It's a punch to the gut. What's most dangerous is that, at first glance, Megan and Troy seemed perfect for the job. They were polite, remembered orders, even flirted with customers. But that's where the danger lies. Villains don't always show up wearing black capes. Sometimes they come smiling and handing back exact change. If you lead a team, pay attention to the untold stories. The conversations hidden in laughter, the glances that shift direction. Michael was starting to understand that behind the counter, a cruel play was unfolding, and Henry was the target of the next scene. Faced with the cruelty he witnessed, Michael knew he couldn't act on emotion alone. He needed proof, something undeniable, not just to protect Henry, but to understand the full extent of the rot hiding beneath the apron of good employees. So, he devised a plan worthy of a strategist. He discreetly installed cameras and microphones in the restaurant. And, as every good story needs allies, he enlisted the help of a loyal customer, a single mother, who agreed to play her part in the trap. She did exactly as planned, ordered her meal, pretended not to have enough money, and, just like before, Henry offered to cover part of the bill. Pure generosity, expecting nothing in return. And of course, Megan and Troy were nearby, ready to swoop in like vultures. They tried to manipulate the situation again, spreading the lie that Henry was stealing from the register. Little did they know that every word, every glance, every sarcastic laugh was being recorded. What Michael was building wasn't just a case against two problematic employees. It was a story of justice unfolding in real time. An example of how acting strategically can be more effective than reacting in anger. That applies to life. When you're faced with injustice, breathe, observe, gather the pieces. Then act with wisdom. The game was still in motion, but Michael already had the right cards in hand. And the turning point was fast approaching. The restaurant was packed that day. Customers coming in, orders going out. Everything seemed like any other ordinary afternoon. Until Patricia, the manager, called Henry into the office. Megan and Troy had planted yet another seed of doubt, and this time, dismissal seemed inevitable. Henry walked in with his head down, unaware he was about to be hit with yet another injustice. And while the false stories echoed among the co-workers, Michael stood up, firm and calm, like someone who carries the truth in his pocket. Amid the tension, Michael dropped the disguise. Eyes turned, the room fell silent. "I'm Michael Carter, one of the owners of Carter's Diner," he said. And before anyone could react, the recordings began to play. Clear audio, sharp visuals, exposed intentions. Megan and Troy were unmasked right then and there, in front of everyone, with no room for performance. The police were called, and it was right there, in that small restaurant office, that one of the most important stories in that place took a new direction. Henry, who just minutes earlier was on the verge of being humiliated, now stood as the symbol of truth restored. Michael, in turn, didn't just expose two employees. He exposed a broken system, one ruled by silence, where good people suffered quietly. If you've ever been falsely accused or watched it happen to someone else, you know the pain it brings. But you also know the strength that comes from seeing justice prevail. And at Carter's Diner, justice wasn't just served, it got a standing ovation. But the biggest twist was still to come. After the storm comes the rebuilding. But in Michael's case, he didn't just want to fix a mistake. He wanted to transform lives. The day after the confrontation, he gathered the entire team and made an announcement no one expected. Henry, the quiet and kind-hearted dishwasher, would be promoted to front-of-house manager. A position of respect, better conditions, and above all, recognition. Stories like his don't just deserve applause, they deserve real action. And that's exactly what Michael delivered, without hesitation. But it didn't stop there. Upon learning about Henry's living situation, Michael acted like a true leader with purpose. He bought him a dignified home, paid off the medical debts left from his wife's treatment, and even initiated internal reforms in the company's policies. He created an emergency fund named after Henry to support employees during tough times. Because any company that grows from human stories must, at some point, give back. And at Carter's Diner, that became law. Imagine being recognized not just for what you do, but for who you are. Imagine seeing someone turn your pain into a bridge to help others. That's what happened with Henry. From dishwasher to living example that integrity still matters. If you lead, or plan to lead someday, let these stories inspire you. Don't wait for scandals to start valuing those who carry your business on their shoulders. And even with all this happening, there was still something more that would make Carter's Diner headline news across the entire city. Carter's Diner, which used to be just another diner praised on social media, became a symbol of something much bigger: restored values. The news about Michael's gesture spread through the city like a wildfire of good. Local newspapers, radio shows, even influencers began talking about the restaurant that promoted a dishwasher to manager. But what truly moved people wasn't the spectacle itself, it was the real stories behind it. Ordinary people being valued. People who, for so long, had been invisible. Henry now walked through the restaurant's halls with a different look in his eyes. Not arrogance, but the gaze of someone who had finally been seen, heard, and respected. He kept working, yes, but by choice, not by necessity. And that made all the difference. He was the one welcoming new employees, sharing advice, listening to those who needed it. The stories multiplied around him, and every person who entered Carter's Diner could feel something different in the air, a sense of humanity that couldn't be bought with advertising. Michael changed too. Once just a watchful businessman, he became a present leader. He stayed close, talked to employees, encouraged internal projects. He restructured training, raised wages, and set up an anonymous complaint channel. And all of this came from one simple decision: to truly care. Sometimes, all a company needs to change is the courage to listen to the stories no one wants to hear. And it was in this new environment that the restaurant found its true purpose. So tell me, how many times have you judged someone without knowing their story? How many times have you overlooked someone's silence, thinking they were just another employee? The truth is, behind every tired face, there might be a battle you could never imagine. And maybe, all that person is waiting for is someone who truly sees them. Michael could have ignored the signs. He could have delegated, complained, or simply gone on with his comfortable life. But he chose to act, and that made all the difference. Now, what are you going to do with everything you just saw? Are you going to close this video and carry on like it was just another inspiring story? Or will you start looking differently at the people around you? Justice, respect, and true leadership don't lie in pretty speeches. They show up in quiet actions. And it doesn't matter if you run a company or just your own day-to-day life. You can always be an agent of change. If this story touched you, drop a comment below. What part of the story impacted you the most? I want to hear your thoughts, because this isn't just about stories, it's about real people. And if you want to keep learning to see beyond the obvious, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you'll find content that challenges, inspires, and transforms. Because every great change begins with a simple decision: to care.